Okay, everybody. Welcome to our first virtual honors hour. Here we have Eric Feldman. He's the associate director with FIU in DC. Today we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things. Some of you guys submitted some questions on Instagram that will be answered at the end of this presentation. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be talking about internships, scholarship opportunities, everything that you can imagine with FIU in DC. So I'll let Eric take it away from here. So thanks for coming on, Eric.
Great. Thanks for having me, Enrique, and thanks to everyone who did provide questions in advance. And I'm glad to hear from folks afterwards, too, via email and otherwise with additional questions. I would like to start before getting into kind of specific programs and opportunities with a little thought on why Washington, D.C. and what this city is all about. Because clearly internships exist in Miami, internships exist in other cities like New York, internships exist in other countries. And so why are we having a program dedicated to helping students get an internship in this one tiny 60 square mile city of Washington, D.C.? And I think that's because Washington, D.C. is a city like no other one in the country. So even the location of Washington, D.C., why it is where it is, as opposed to more north or more south or previous cities that have served as the capital, is a result of political compromise. You can do more research on that if you're curious about why Washington, D.C. is the location it is, or even the shape that it is. The shape of it is a result of political compromise between the states of Virginia and Maryland that surround it, and just even where it is and how it looks is informed by politics and democracy, and that serves as a starting point for the fact that this small city produces so much of the policy proposals and research and laws that inform what goes on in the rest of the country and the rest of the world. And beyond just that policy perspective, as a city, it has simultaneously its own local culture and identity with even its own music styles and its own artistic things that it's known for, and also serves as the seat of our national culture with organizations like the Kennedy Center that you may be familiar, recognize the most prestigious national artists with the Kennedy Center honors. So it is just a city like no other in terms of its influence, especially in terms of its size, really. And I'm sure everyone watching this knows that it is obviously the seat of all three branches of our federal government: the legislative branch that makes our laws, the executive branch which executes our laws and puts them into action, the judicial branch which reviews our laws. And so obviously that provides a lot of opportunity to engage as a citizen or participant in our democracy, and also for career opportunities. I'd like to make the case that there's probably a lot more going on in our federal government than you already know, and to know Washington, D.C. is to know the great breadth and scope of opportunities and operations in our federal government. So if you've ever tried to research how many federal agencies exist in the U.S. federal government, like I have, you would find that there is no number that exists. There are literally so many federal agencies that even the federal government has not been able to count the total number of them. So while FIU students might be familiar with some or all of the more well-known agencies or cabinet level agencies like Department of Education, Health and Human Services, and Treasury, there are hundreds and hundreds of other smaller federal agencies that still report, to the president and are part of our executive branch of government, including ones that don't sound like federal agencies based on the names. The Corporation for National Community Service is a federal agency, runs volunteer programs like AmeriCorps. The Export-Import Bank of the United States, not a bank like Bank of America and other ones we might use for our debit cards, but a federal agency that provides loans to businesses to encourage them to export more products around the world. And as a matter of fact, one of our very own FIU alumni works at what is possibly the smallest federal agency, the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, a 3-person organization that supports cultural and educational collaborations between the US and Japan, but nonetheless a federal government agency. So no matter how much you think you know about the government, there's a lot of opportunities in it, and I think it's common for our unit and even other universities that operate appear to hear from their students the same agencies over and over, that you might want to work for the FBI, Department of Justice, these big name things, CIA. It's worthwhile to really get to know the federal government, as an employer. Another point being, though, that a lot of the policy coordination that goes on in DC is outside of the government. DC is really defined by organizations that are non-governmental that exist and decided that Washington, DC is the city where they wanted to set up shop because they try to influence the policy of the country and influence the government in different ways. If you haven't heard about think tanks, or if you have, there's always more to learn. Think tanks are organizations, sometimes described as universities without students, that produce a lot of research. They produce papers, they produce videos that share data, that share insights, and that recommend new laws and new policies. There are many, many different types of think tanks. There are ones that focus on a wide variety of different topics. There are ones that focus on kind of specific topics like national security. There are ones that take a certain ideological or political stance, other ones that are less consistent in the ideology and politics of what they're producing, but definitely a category of organization to know about, and a very prominent one in DC, and that are constantly hosting a lot of events throughout DC. Private industry for those interested in business and economics and finance and things of that nature. A few different scales or categories of how even the policy affecting private business and how private businesses operate is coordinated from our nation's capital. Nearly every company that you think of has an office in DC that acts as their government relations or lobbying office, where they keep track of laws that could affect their business and coordinate with congressional offices and federal agencies on behalf of that company. Just for example, because they share the floor with FIU and DC in our office building, Dell's government relations office might be concerned with trade and export policies that could affect their products or the parts that their products are made of. Moving one level up from individual companies, every industry you could think of has some sort of organization or association that represents the interests of an entire industry, including competing companies within that industry. And when I say every type of industry you could think of, I mean every one of them, including companies that make wallpaper that are advocating on behalf of that industry and keeping track of laws that could affect it. And moving up one level higher of a whole industry, organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that are representing the entire private industry, all sorts of companies. Opposite of that, perhaps, if you will, there are a lot of labor unions based here as well that are representing, rather than the companies and the management of those companies themselves, the people that work for those companies. And not to leave out science and technology and our STEM students and future professionals. Government agencies like the National Science Foundation and National Institutes of Health are coming up with new scientific discoveries and new health and research. Companies like Google and other tech companies all have operations here. Google's doing a lot of cloud operations here. And companies like MITRE, which FIU is a great partnership with, that do a lot of technological and STEM and science work for the federal government there. So that's a little landscape of what the city looks like in terms of organizations. And so moving into how FIU engages in all of this, our operation is kind of referred to in 3 buckets, one being solutions. So those past slides did give some insight into the different types of policy topics that are coordinated here. At FIU, we try to stay engaged in the conversation around some of the research areas that our faculty are most adept at, from transforming the way science courses are taught, water and coastal infrastructure, Latin American policy, cybersecurity, brain health, and health disparities. What this looks like is obviously more so. We're not in a pandemic stay-at-home mode, making sure FIU faculty members are in DC speaking before congressional committees and members of Congress and federal agencies, letting DC policymakers know what new research FIU is coming up with in these areas, and making sure FIU is part of that very same policy-making conversation that I've been talking about. Your very own university is involved in that. Sometimes that takes the form of large and prestigious events that FIU hosts. So in the past year, there have been major events on brain health and water hosted in the city, featuring not only FIU researchers, but all sorts of think tank and government officials that FIU brought together. So when you think about DC, you can be proud, as I'm proud, that our own universities has such a presence in DC. That part of our operation is called our idea exchange. And then what we're really here to talk about is what we call our talent lab. The talent lab is our student operation. The talent lab consists of fly-in seminars where students are coming to DC for 3 days to experience these different types of organizations and to meet with alumni and partners that we have here. The Honors College has hosted fly-ins before, and Honors College students can also apply to various other fly-ins that are open to all students. Internships, which will be a huge topic of this conversation, and we'll talk a lot more about that. And our brand new Hamilton Scholars Program, which is a opportunity to complete an internship while also taking an honors college course and receive some other support. So we'll talk more about all these things. To give you some idea of scope of the amount of FIU students who are already engaging in DC, about 100 students every year do an internship up here, and 500 more on top of that do some sort of other short-term experience that lands them in the capital. Every student that comes to DC, whether through a fly-in or an internship, learns various skills along the way. Obviously, every internship is a little different, but we've developed this list of learning outcomes that if you're here, you're going to be learning in partnership with us a little bit more about communications and why communications is so important to advocate on specific topics and engage in that policymaking process. Technology, how emerging technologies are transforming your career possibilities, all about politics and policy. Global learning, getting the international perspective, how diplomacy and international development and other topics like that export DC's operations to around the world and career development. So you might be interested in a career in Washington, D.C. And the main thing to know is that our team does have an infrastructure in place for us to partner on finding an internship with you that is based on your needs and your preferences, and also to make sure that we know that you have an internship and are coming to DC. This screenshot from our website shows that it's easy to let us know that you're seeking an internship. You can fill out a form that has questions about what your passions are, what your interests are, what your skills are, so that we know about that. You start getting a newsletter from us every 2 weeks that has internship opportunities and other professional development insights, and stay in touch with us about things that we find relevant to you and the things that you research on your own that we can support you with. And you also want to make sure that you let us know if you got a DC internship on your own. And there's a way on our website to onboard to let us know that. And the reason you want to make sure we know that you have a DC internship here is us working with you to find an internship is only half of the experience. The real magic happens once you're in Washington, D.C. with an internship. We have a full series of professional development events every semester. This academic year alone, we've hosted events ranging from international development careers, artificial intelligence, starting your own app or podcast, and we've had an event with FIU alumni that work on various 2020 presidential campaigns, plus all of our fall and spring semesters start with a really neat orientation at George Washington's Mountain Vernon Estate. So it's a really fantastic experience once you get up here with an internship, sort of regardless of how that internship was secured, with our direct support on your own, et cetera. all FIU interns in DC get access to these great programs. The most perhaps important takeaway message from this presentation, this discussion, is that there is no one list of internships in DC that are available to FIU students. I hope my earlier conversations about the types of organizations here gave you some sense of scope of the amount of organizations and companies and government entities that operate here. Nearly all of them have some sort of internship program, and nearly all of those are open to any college students, and in many cases even recent graduates. So regardless of whether an FIU student has had an internship at a place before, or that we have a certain relationship with that organization, the entire city and the entire region is really open to you in terms of finding the right internship. Every semester, FIU students do tend to intern in several offices of members of Congress. Our South Florida congressional delegation, including Representative Marcus L. Powell, Donna Shalala, Mario Diaz-Balart, Frederica Wilson, and more, host FIU interns. FIU students can apply directly to individual members of Congress that they're interested in, or can apply to a number of third-party programs like the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute and the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. These are nonprofit organizations that have their own internship programs, often with more financial support than going directly to a member, and then they place students that they accept with members of Congress that are part of their network. It's worth mentioning here on an honors college program that Chile, the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, so go ahead and Google that in another browser to read more about after you watch this presentation, reserves a spot every fall and spring semester for an honors college student specifically. So that's definitely a key opportunity for honor students interested in DC internships and Congress specifically. I'll also make the note here that while we want to work closely with you on applying to all internships, as we are, and I don't think I mentioned this explicitly earlier, part of FIU's Office of Governmental Relations, we have very close relationships with all the South Florida members of Congress, and really want to work with you on your applications for those members of Congress, strategize with you about which members beforehand, help you with those applications. This list is also on our website, so I don't need to go over them all here, but you can find this on our website. You can look up the websites of these organizations. For those interested in federal agencies, I certainly recommend looking at HACU's National Internship Program. HACU is the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. They place students with a variety of federal agencies, and there's pay associated with that. And with that, you're not necessarily choosing the federal agency, but as I was discussing earlier, the opportunity to work with a federal agency you might not have even thought of before is really a great career development experience. We've often had students with the Heritage Foundation. We have alumni that work at AARP. If all that you know about AARP is that some restaurants have discounts for their members, we definitely recommend looking more into them. They're actually one of the largest advocacy and membership organizations in the country. And so for anyone interested in advocacy work, it's a great place to be. So I can engage more with individual folks about these different opportunities on a one-on-one basis now that you're connected with us, but hopefully that definitely gives some scope of sample placements. This is an exciting time to be able to talk about FIU and DC with you, because just this week we launched a brand new program called the Hamilton Scholars Program. You are the first group of people to hear about this presentation, this new program, once it's officially launched. We've only for a couple weeks been mentioning to groups that this is coming soon, but this just launched right now. And so the Hamilton Scholars Program is a DC internship semester program. To make the distinction between what I've been discussing so far in this program, we work with all FIU students and even alumni to support applying to internships in any way we can. We'll take a look at those internships, the cover letters. We'll let you know about organizations that we know of that are relevant to your interests. Any FIU student, even if you're not a Hamilton Scholar, gets to come to a wide variety of events that we host at our space. So that will never change. The Hamilton Scholars Program is for students who, one, are really passionate and can demonstrate that passion for a specific issue area. So let's say you care about the environment, healthcare access, education, whatever it is. Those are just examples. It could be anything in the world. For a student who really has that thing that they care about and can show, here's what I've already done to make a difference. Here's how I would spend a semester in DC to make the difference. Or even your resume, your letters of recommendation can really show this theme of an issue. This is a program for you. This is also for students who are seeking to take an in-person course. A question some of you may have is what happens with your coursework while you're in DC? The big answer to that question is, there's such a wide variety of online courses available that a lot of students continue to take online courses. For those seeking to take at least one course in person in DC while you're here, this is a program to consider. And also what happens with this program is you're making a stronger commitment to your DC experience than other students that are here, but then they're getting more in return. So the types of events that we host at the FIU DC space, while they're available to all interns, Hamilton Scholars will be committing to participating in those events, committing to engaging with a mentor, etc. So Hamilton Scholars, have a paid internship. We will do everything in our power to pair you with a paid internship with one of our partners in DC. We certainly recommend, if not require, that if you're planning on applying to this program, you are applying to paid internships at the same time as applying to our program, because it could be ideal that you're researching an internship that we didn't know about that's the best fit for you. So there's certainly something to say about applying to your own internship at the same time. But also, if you're accepted to the Hamilton Scholars Program, we are going to work with all of our partners up here to make sure that you do end up with something. You would be taking the in-person Washington Seminar course, which is an honors college course. If my first 5 minutes of this presentation talking about influencing policy in DC and the types of organizations here were really of interest to you, and you could picture taking a course like that, expanding on each of those areas in much more depth, a lot of guest speakers. Hamilton Scholars will be in that course. Hamilton Scholars would get a $1,200 scholarship to assist with any expenses of DC. And of course, that's on top of any pay from the internship itself. We are working with an intern housing provider up here to make it so that Hamilton Scholars who wish to take advantage of that housing option can live in kind of the same housing provider. And then again, the events that we have and the mentors that we have, we'd be committing to doing those things. So a lot more information about this is on our brand new website. Hamilton.fiu.edu will take you to the page on our website that's specifically for this brand new Hamilton Scholars Program. I should mention, if you're curious, this is not named after the statesman Alexander Hamilton or the play, though it doesn't hurt that it's aligned with that very DC sort of theme. It is named after Ruth and Glenn Hamilton. Ruth Hamilton was the former executive director of the Graham Center on campus and is a huge supporter of getting FIU students to DC. And so the namesake of this program is a true passionate FIU individual. This is, as is everything that we do, open to all majors. We definitely want our science and technology, engineering type students in this program. We love art and creative people in this program, in addition to all the types of kind of majors and career interests that one would expect to apply to a DC program. So definitely this is open to all majors. And the application period for this is basically this month. April just started. Throughout the month of April, we're going to be spreading the word about this and getting applications for this. And feel free to help us spread the word because the deadline is on May 1st. With that is where I will address the questions that Enrique has compiled, and also, if Enrique has any of his own questions that, after hearing about the Hamilton Scholars or anything else that he might have or think students would have, we can definitely address those. I wanted to make sure that
Definitely.
not only my contact information was here, but you get a scope of the whole team here. This operation would not be possible without our vice president and associate vice president for governmental relations, Michelle and Carlos. We have great support from our student and recent grad fellows and interns. The team that you really need to know here, I mean, you've met myself, Eric, and I'm glad to hear from you. My email address is pretty easy, ericf@fiu.edu. Someone you're definitely going to know if you don't already, though, is our graduate assistant, Travis Dozier. Travis is really the point of contact for that getting the internship part. I'm involved in that. I'm sure we'll be in touch. I'm also running a lot of what's going on up here in DC. The person who is finding new internship opportunities, preparing the newsletter with internship opportunities, keeping updated our list of students like you that we know want to come and what their interests are, and providing that resume, cover letter, consulting support, even while we're virtual, is Travis. So know that name, know that face, and definitely take advantage of Travis, as he's the one who's going to play the leading role in getting you to DC.
Yeah.
So
Travis is also an honors
Enrique,
alumni.
yes.
So he's great. So some of you guys probably know him.
Enrique, and I should mention too, is yes, Travis is an FIU alumnus. That I myself, an honors alumnus. Travis is. I myself am an honors college alumnus and proud.
Hey,
So.
shouts out to the Honors College. Well, we had a couple questions, right? Should I start off with them, or should we start off with the scholarship questions?
Whatever you want me to talk about, I'll talk about.
Yeah, I think we can start off with the scholarship questions. So we asked you guys to submit some questions for the FIU and DC program, and Eric did an amazing job explaining all the opportunities for you guys. So make sure to take advantage of these opportunities. But a lot of you guys asked about specific internship opportunities. So Eric actually created a slide answering all those specific internship questions, and then we'll go into a couple extra questions that we got from the actual social media post.
Sounds good. So if basically the select column is, these all came from you. A variety of you responded to the FIU Honors Instagram saying, do you have internships for X major or X topic or at X organization? So here is what I have for those specific ones. So finance and business. And I'll say the overarching point that I did kind of allude to earlier. Yes is the answer to any question about does any type of internship exist here. If it's on this list, it doesn't necessarily mean there's been an FIU intern there before. In many of these places there have been. But the answer is yes, there are internships for everything. So finance and business, I should mention that the president of our local alumni chapter for FIU works at Grant Thornton, a major accounting consulting firm. All of the big four accounting firms have offices in this area. I alluded to tech companies here earlier. They're all here: Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. You may know from the news, it was out in the news a year ago, that Amazon's second headquarters is coming to the area. There's business side opportunities to that. Government contractors. If you haven't explored the world of government contracting, these are some big names: Booz Allen, Leidos, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, MITRE is a big FIU partner one. Those are some things that came to mind for me for business, but I mean, I should also mention that every entity here needs people that have some sort of business acumen. Even the federal agencies, are having accountants, for example, or people handling financial side of things. So really endless opportunities there. In terms of human rights and related fields to human rights, I mean, that's an enormous part of DC. One thing that I normally spend more time on up front, but saved for kind of this slide here, is nonprofit organizations and internationally focused nonprofit organizations. Advocacy groups are all over the city. Oxfam, for example, deals with poverty. IRC, International Rescue Committee, which also has operations in Miami and elsewhere, is big on the human trafficking front. Amnesty International, huge name on the human rights front, human rights campaign to get on genocide specifically. The Holocaust Museum is here. So this is just such a small snippet, so many things. Criminal justice. One of our interns this semester before going back to Miami due to everything going on was with DC's Metropolitan Police Department. One of our alumni works at DC Superior Court. The International Association of Chiefs of Police is in Alexandria, which is just across the river from DC. And certainly when we say DC internships, we mean the whole region, including, throughout Virginia and Maryland as well. Someone asked about the United Nations, and it's worth noting that while the UN's headquarters is in New York, certainly there are offices and programs of the UN that have DC offices, and looking at the UN website does show some DC-based opportunities as well. I will say, and we'll get a little more into financial situations in a future question, I think. It's been my observation with researching UN internships that whether New York or DC, many of them do seem to unfortunately be unpaid. And Smithsonian, the Smithsonian is an amazing, also part of the federal government, by the way, set of more than 10 museums here in the city that are all free. True national cultural institution. They absolutely do have internships. The website I have here, si.edu/OFI, is their Office of Fellowships and Internships. And so whoever is interested in that should definitely check this out. And I will note that kind of like a large university, it's very decentralized. It's hard for me to give an answer about they have internships 3 times a year and they're paid or unpaid, because the Smithsonian is, more than 10 museums, and then even within each museum is large numbers of departments and programs within each museum, and they're basically each doing their own thing. But that OFI website kind of does their best to direct you to what those opportunities throughout the institution are. And we do have contacts there, so whoever's watching this who does want to seriously pursue that, do as much research as you can on that site. But if there's a question you don't have resolution to, or a way that I can help, I certainly have met some of the people from that office and can reach out to them.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much for that. Let me pull up some of our other questions. So are we still recording? Okay, we're still recording. Perfect. Okay, so a few other questions that we got that I thought would be good to answer. The first one is, what's the status of the FIU and DC program over this summer?
Fantastic, important, timely question. The answer is basically that it's really dependent on what individual internship hosts are deciding to do with their internship program. Because we are not, directly arranging housing and courses, especially over the summer. The Hamilton Scholars Program, which is for the fall, has a little bit of that type of coordination. The status of the summer is, if an FIU student comes to DC this summer with an internship they've gotten, we are still fully operational and supportive of students in that situation. So if you find yourself here in the summer because you applied for and got an internship, I'm working hard right now to plan a whole semester worth of events, as we always do. I'm planning it with the assumption that all of those events will be online for now, and then if conditions permit, partway through the summer, we would love to bring those back to our space, our beautiful space, just a couple blocks from the Capitol, for things to be back to normal. So, I mean, as long as FIU is working remotely, we are working remotely, but we are still available for individual support of students and are planning remote events like this one. In terms of what I'm seeing in terms of whether or not companies, organizations, and agencies are offering summer internships, a lot remains to be seen right now. I've heard some organizations have totally canceled their internship programs. For example, National Geographic, which was something we had started to promote, decided to totally cancel and not do summer internships. Other organizations, like just to give one tiny example, Win Without War, an advocacy organization that we visited on a recent fly-in, they're currently still hoping that their internship program, which starts a little later in the summer is still on. So anything can change at any moment with any specific organization, but it's really dependent on one, where you're applying to is doing, and two, our own students, your own determinations of whether traveling to live in another city for the summer is realistic and a good call for you based on your own health concerns, taking care of family back in Miami. But we definitely want a cohort of students here in the summer, and if that's something you're looking to do, we're here to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Another question we got was, how hands-on are these internships? Is it more office work or field work? I know that's probably like a little bit of a different question right now, but yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to speak typically though, and again, the common theme to the previous answer is that it really depends on where you're working. Um, while a lot of your experience the semester you're here is curated by us in terms of our programming and our connection to alumni mentors and our support of you, the actual at your job experience will look very different depending on if you're working for a member of Congress, a company like Google, etc. Um, and I'll mention I've been in this role and living here in DC for not quite a year and a half, but a year and some months change now. And I've, gotten the pleasure of meeting and working with probably about 100, a little over 100 FIU interns at this point. I hear very positive things that the internships here are very engaging, very stimulating. I know for a fact, both from my experience having a job here and working with interns here, that being in DC is rife with opportunities to engage in events and receptions and panels and all sorts of things outside of the office, often on behalf of work. So, if, your internship were about water or health policy, for example, there are a lot of congressional briefings, think tank events, and other things outside of your workspace on those topics that you would get to go to take notes on, or see what other people are talking about. So that's one unique thing about the city in terms of getting out of your own workspace. Is a lot of what anyone working in DC is doing is engaging with other partner organizations, keeping tabs on other agencies. If you're an advocacy organization, you want to know what Congress is doing, and you're going to go to congressional briefings and stuff like that. So I think the experience is a very active one.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. And then the last question we have is, so since a lot of these internships are unpaid, do you have any tips for like living in DC if you are having an unpaid internship?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is, and while it's not untrue that a lot of internships are unpaid, is that my first piece of advice is just to try to get a paid internship.
Hmm.
And certainly there are a lot of them, and certainly ones you're going to hear about from us are going to be paid. Virtually everything that we are sending out in our newsletter, which, again, if you go to our website, you let us know you're interested in internships, you'll start getting that newsletter, is paid. What they're paid is very different. Internships range from a stipend of $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000 for the semester to, $25 an hour. So what paid means varies a lot, but every single year, more and more internships are becoming paid in some capacity. Members of Congress have allocated money to pay interns. A lot of offices are. So there are more paid opportunities than you might immediately realize, and do know that if you see an email from us, it's most likely paid, even if it's a minimal base amount and things of that nature. So there's that. In terms of unpaid internships, in addition to the Hamilton Scholars Program, which is our new kind of central way of supporting students through paid internship and an additional scholarship. For fall and spring semesters, the Academic Works portal, where all official FIU scholarships are housed. We do have a separate, our Make a Difference DC Scholarship Fund. So awards there are up to $2,000. So again, something, but not necessarily something that's going to fund an entire semester of housing expense and things like that if you have a totally unpaid internship. But certainly Between the Hamilton Scholars Program and the Make a Difference DC Scholarship on Academic Works, we are trying to play the largest role we can in providing some scholarship support to students. The big question mark would be, housing options. Our newly revamped website under the internships part of our talent lab section does have links to a variety of different housing providers. There are companies that provide housing specifically for interns. There are interns. There are universities that open their housing to university interns from other universities. So you can really research what housing option is best for you. And I'll say that uh, other housing options are available as well. We've done uh, a lot of work to make sure that we're able to direct you to reliable, intern university focused housing providers. But like any city, there's a lot of research one can do to find the best housing option for them. And then, I will also say the reality of the situation I've seen is that, some FIU students do decide to get a additional part-time job while they're up here, whether that's in a store, restaurant, etc., a coffee shop. I'm glad to be a consultant in terms of how to structure one's life up here, because obviously we don't advocate for having no time for your coursework or taking fewer courses uh, or performing less well in your internship because of an outside job. And so we want to be sensitive to how much you're working and stuff, and it's totally something that's on your own outside of our scope of operations. But that is something that some FIU students have done, especially if they have a lighter coursework or a part-time internship. For students with a full-time internship, it might be a little less realistic, but that's an option as well.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. I didn't know that they could also do that. Okay, that's good. Well, besides that, I think that was our last question. So, I mean, I want to say thank you again to Eric for presenting and presenting all of these different opportunities for our students to get politically involved and get involved in DC. We're living in very political times, and there's so much going on. So I think it's so important to know about these opportunities and to take advantage of these opportunities. So thank you so much for explaining everything, and it's been great. And like Eric said, they have a brand new website, so make sure to go check it out. Sign up for their newsletter, and they're going to be having different virtual events, and we're going to be promoting those. I'm sure they'll send those over to us, so you guys will hear about those in our newsletter as well. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. But besides that, thank you so much, Eric, for everything.
Thank you. Thanks, Enrique.
No problem. And have a good rest of your day. Thank you, everybody. And stay safe out there. Wash your hands.
Indeed.
Bye.